building in the ecosystem, bunch of founders, and we're going to see where it goes. Truthfully, I've just met all of them right now, so I'm going to learn about, I don't know, what they're actually working on. So we'll start first. Michael, you're a professor, a builder, you're in AI, XR, everything. Who are you? What are you working on?
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Gold. I'm a professor at the School of Visual Arts in the Computer Arts Department. I teach 3D artists there. And what I teach them is I teach them about tech direction, how to build real-time 3D and with AI. And I'm also an early builder on Bitcoin, launched an early Ordinals project and had a startup in that space from 2021 to 2023.
Awesome. I can't wait to get more into that. Like, if you don't know, a bit of an art nerd, so specifically computer art, so we'll dive in there.
All right.
Patrick, what's going on from Bitcoin Startup Lab? Who are you? What are you working on?
Hi guys, my name is Patrick Hale. I'm with Bitcoin Startup Lab. We are the #1 pre-accelerator for Bitcoin projects. So we love founders and entrepreneurs, people with entrepreneurial spirit. We take ideas and turn them into industry-leading companies. Some of the companies that have come from our school are Velar, such as this shirt that I'm repping, Liquidium, which is their pioneering lending and borrowing on Bitcoin and with Ordinals. And yeah, many, many more. So I'm here today with IRL Alpha. Very, very privileged, huge fan of IRL Alpha, and thank you again.
Thank you. I can't wait to dive more. I'm saying not accelerator, pre-accelerator. Okay, you're getting them before they're before they're known.
Absolutely. That's one of the beautiful things about what we do compared to accelerators is we take even the earliest ideas. So to be a great founder, I think you have to come from an interesting background maybe, and that's one of the beautiful things about what we do. We don't have any obligations with large VCs or whatever to take, people from amazing schools and amazing backgrounds, and I think that's where a lot of the innovation gets missed out on. So yeah, we're really happy to be a pre-accelerator.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll dive a little bit more into that here. Mm-hmm. Last, definitely but not least, Jeff from Token Form. What's going on? Who are you? What are you working on?
Hey, I'm Jeff. Well, I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff, but been in the video space for about 25 years. Most recently, I'm CEO of Token Form, which is focused on blockchain for business, and I'm a co-founder of Pillar VC, which is one of the early founding members of Algorand and funded the business Circle. We have about $450 million under management and focus on pre-accelerator, seed stage, earlier stage stuff, and just love the blockchain space, and obviously the marriage of AI is something we're really super focused on. So.
Totally. Well, maybe let's just start right there because, anyone who's in AI knows the last 2 years have been cartoonish. Like, it's wild what's happening. Every week the news is mind-blowing. Sora, a couple of weeks ago was another one that hurt the brain here. Like, with it happening so fast, how are you guys figuring out what to look into and what's your media intake so like, I'm on the good stuff, or is this another startup wrapping GPT and calling it something innovative?
I think it's a network of people because you can't do it on your own. I think one of the biggest mistakes is if you're trying to consume and suck up the fire hose, it's not going to happen. You're going to miss stuff. So it's really trying to get small amounts of information from a lot of different people and then connect the dots. And I think that, that means you may not be first in the next big thing, but 8 months ago, NVIDIA was a $100 stock, and today it's $850 stock, right? So you don't need to be early. You need to be right. And I think that the best way to do that is to get as many different data points, not hurry into stuff. It's different if you're trading PFPs and you're trying to get into a project.
We're hurrying into stuff.
Yeah, then that's a different animal. But if you're doing something from an entrepreneurial perspective and building a business, you want to be more methodical. You almost never hear about a company being too late and failing. You almost always hear about a company being too early and failing.
Totally, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, maybe just since you've been in video so long too. So, what was your initial reaction to something like Sora when the demos came out?
Well, so my brother happens to be the showrunner for the #1 TV show in the world.
Oh, nice.
So he's freaking out.
Oh, really? Really? Okay.
Yeah, because writers and actors and camera people and all the rest of the people that go into this, his view is that we're 3 to 5 years from the entire creative side of the video business being destroyed, however you want to look at it. From an existing party's perspective, there's a huge amount of risk. So he's looking at how AI can be generating all kinds of programs really, in terms of video purposes. So I think it's more than likely 96% of the projects and businesses that are, including Soros, and maybe if Elon succeeds with his ChatGPT lawsuit, maybe gone. Maybe somebody completely different. I remember the late 90s during the internet bubble. I could literally sit here and name 25 companies you guys have probably never heard of that literally were the golden children of that that era. And so I think it's early, and I think it's I think the utility of blockchain is yet to be proven.
There's utility. There's a lot of people here who made a lot of money.
I don't mean it in that sense. I mean from a durability perspective, not from where it is today, but like how does it grow beyond what it is today? And that's an open question, right? I believe in it, but I also know that there are points in time where things happen and they evolve to a completely different stage. And I think that's what's going to happen with blockchain. I think the way we all think about blockchain today and AI is going to be completely different 10 years from now.
Totally. Well, so like Patrick, you're looking for people to pre-accelerate before. How are you evaluating? Okay, what are you using Are you using ChatGPT right now to help you? What are you doing to generate images? Do you evaluate their interaction with AI as someone you're saying this is going to be a good person?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
Just talking to the mic a little bit close to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I would say AI, we're on our third cohort right now. We're getting ready to go in our fourth cohort. We started out with 5 students in our first cohort, second cohort, 30 students. Now we're at 30 teams for this cohort of 3 each. Wow. And then our next cohort, we're planning at 100 teams. And we have an increasing interest from founders building AI and utilizing AI on blockchain and for different blockchain eccentric companies. I mean, I would say those are definitely, when we talk to founders, we're absolutely looking for new use cases with AI. And I think innovation is one of those things that you kind of have fun with. You got to have fun, you got to play around. And that's really where the brilliance comes out. So I think we look for fun founders.
Nice.
People who want to have fun, people who are building fun things. And I think that a lot of great innovation comes from that.
See, I was wondering, I was hoping that you sit someone down, they come in, oh, use ChatGPT or something like that. No, sit down. Here we go. Boot camp. You're wasting time. Let's get you, because I do think we're starting to hit a point right now where I know that people who are using AI, they're moving faster than other people. And if you're not, you're just moving, I don't know, I'm up here. So it's.
We do have a few different students right now in this third cohort that is doing some amazing stuff with AI, inscribing with AI, full blockchain kind of interactions with AI. Some
nice.
Really interesting stuff going on.
Hell yeah, nice. All right, well, so Michael, you're deep in the tech space too here, and like we had another thing that just happened recently. We had the Vision Pro finally drop. We have people now at our meetups every week. They're wearing them in person the whole time, typing in front of us on. It's getting wild. Yeah. And we've been talking so long about XR, AR. It's all coming, and Apple finally stepped in. How's that impacting what you've been doing?
So I've been. Like a lot of my friends have been asking me, Mike, should I get the Vision Pro?
Yes.
And I tell them, unless you're building an app for the Vision Pro or going to be developing on it right now, don't get it yet. Wait, because it's like a car payment, $300 a month that Apple will finance for you, right? Yeah. And I think they're predicted to sell 250,000 units this year, which is great for a dev kit. And for a dev kit, it does, if you give it a pass-fail test of can it be used for apps and multitasking and 3D at the same time, it passes that test. It's the first headset that I've used that passed that test, and I've been using headsets a long time. So in that regard, it's really, really good. But a little bit of advice. I saw this on the front page of Reddit today. If you're getting married, don't wear a Vision Pro at your wedding. Like, that's ridiculous.
But see, the problem is you say don't do that. You saw it on the front page of Reddit. That guy put that on. He said, snap a photo. We're going to the front of Reddit. And in a year from now, it's going to be just cringy, but he's the first one.
He is the first one. And his wife does not look pleased.
No. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I haven't opened my Vision Pro yet. It's sitting in my house.
You haven't opened it? Give it to me.
I just got it 2 days ago.
Okay.
And I was at NFT Paris and out of town, but I was asking my son. I'm like, so I'm going to open this thing up. Should I return it? Because he's had his since like the day he had the first iPhone and everything. Yeah. Like he was like 12 and he just fucking got an iPhone. he's like, I'm like, so should I keep it? He goes, well, you have money and it's the best fucking toy ever. He goes, it's great for watching videos on planes and shit because you have a 150-inch screen.
Yeah.
But he's like, it's still not a replacement for a 34-inch monitor and a keyboard. It can be, but it's not really yet.
Totally.
But I think, I've watched a bunch of videos. I've talked to a bunch of people. Look, AR is absolutely going to be an endemic part of life 15 years from now, and it's going to be glasses like yours, or contacts. Yeah. It's not going to be a brick phone from Motorola from 1985, which is now, can literally sit in an earpiece. So I think it's early, but you're right. I mean, if you can immerse yourself in that technology now, then you're going to be ahead of the game for those who want to come in later and develop against it and understand AR. So I think if you're at all remotely touching the periphery, not even the core, you got to have one, right? Because you're gonna. It's Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Outliers. I don't know if you've read that book, but he talks about the hockey players in the NHL. Not only 80% of the hockey players in the NHL were born between January and March, and so it's the same sort of thing here, right? You get in early. You get that 3-month, 6-month, 9-month lead, and now you're taking advantage of things that others can't catch up on because they've got that backlog of knowledge they got to adopt. So in that sense, if you can afford one, you got to have one if you're in tech, period. Doesn't matter whether it's blockchain, AI, traditional Web 2. I mean, I think it's, and you're not dealing with Meta and Google, which tend to do a lot of science projects, and they almost always fail.
Oh, yeah.
But when Apple doesn't do science projects, it's probably their Newton. But
I disagree on that.
Yeah.
In a couple of ways, not on the hardware way.
Yeah.
Right. Because people have made the comparison to it being Newton.
No, I don't mean it in a negative way.
But if you think about the launch of Newton, that was done before broadband internet. Yep. Before Apple had an App Store ecosystem competing against Palm, which did have a pretty vibrant app store ecosystem at that point in time.
I had a Trio. I used to walk around like a geek with it on my hip.
It was a great phone.
Yeah.
So essentially, Apple is launching this with the Vision OS, right? Which, even if this hardware is like too expensive, too clunky, too heavy, the operating system, that App Store ecosystem,
and that advantage by being early,
the walled garden is a double-edged sword. Like Apple probably will support developers who build now for the long term, and that's kind of what I'm betting on. And there's another interesting thing too to add to this that I didn't expect Apple to do until they announced the device. They opened up WebXR on the device, which essentially
I thought they weren't opening it up.
Into the mic too. Thank you.
So they did open it up. It's behind a feature flag. So I posted, like, I got the device. The first thing I did was I figured out, I'm like, how do I enable this? And I posted a tutorial video on X. And then Scoble retweeted it and said how to enable porn mode on the device, which is like partially true, but it does enable you to run things outside of Apple's walled gardens, because you can go to, like, for people who aren't familiar with the term WebXR, what it is it enables the web browser on an immersive device to enable immersive mode, where you can run immersive experiences without a download. Right. There's two components to it. One is full augmented reality mode, which Apple has not built out the software into Safari yet, and the other one is you're doing a VR experience where you can use your hands, and that they've enabled. Right. And it's pretty cool that you can build for the Vision Pro without having to ship an app, and also you can build for it shipping an app. So there's really a lot of opportunities for developers for this device.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I think the thing that people like, you don't know what it's going to be like to use in a new way until you use it. Everyone is like a big screen. Yeah. I think we've already seen some people show, like, hey, pinning stuff is a pretty interesting concept, in your house, pinning stuff. So it's
you can do a virtual Kanban, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You can watch a 3D movie from Disney Plus while checking your messages, right? Because you can have your iMessages open. With 3D televisions, you weren't able to do that because it was essentially like putting blinders on your face and you couldn't even look at your phone. Yeah, so the experience is smooth, much smoother than all previous experiences.
You're way more bullish than when you started out,
but
because in this panel,
bullish in the future.
Yeah,
but still, I don't think people should get it yet. Like because if you're just going to consume content on it, you're paying a premium to consume content, which look, I think you could put your money to use better if you bought Bitcoin or something like that, and you kept that Bitcoin for a year and then bought a cheaper Vision Pro as a consumer.
Do you think it's going to be kind of like the metaverse? Like, because, the metaverse was a thing back in maybe the 80s, 90s. Everyone was doing, brands were coming into the metaverses, that whole ecosystem, and it kind of fell off until, recently with blockchain, metaverses, and things like that. Do you think that, the Apple Pro is kind of going to fade and then just come back, 10 years, 20 years from now and actually be a little bit more substantial?
I think it'll have a continued presence. I think it's going to be for the enterprise. There are a lot of interesting use cases where you need to be hands-free. Like I saw a demo from this company, Retools, that does smart tape measures, and so they sync to an iPad app. So Apple's launch strategy was essentially make almost all of the iPad apps compatible with the headset. You can have them open in windows that you pin. So what this company did is they showed a demo video where someone was just using their iPad app on the Vision Pro to measure things and cut them on a job site, and they had all the measurements synced from the smart tape measure to this iPad app that was hanging in midair over where they needed to actually put the wood. And because they could do this all
true AR.
Yeah, and totally hands free. They're just like moving it, bringing the wood, and they got so like that type of productivity increase translates into actual money. And I think people are going to start figuring out how to do this in various enterprise situations.
Yeah, to me, there's always a Moore's law threshold.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how far is Apple from that threshold where enablement for utility becomes a reality? And we saw that with the internet. Moore's law, we weren't far enough in terms of broadband, ubiquitous broadband connectivity, processing power. We're seeing that now with AI and LLMs. Yep. There's a Moore's law threshold, and once somebody gets there first. There's no question that within the race, somebody's in first place and somebody's in 50th. But I don't know that we're there yet, just because of the clunkiness of the device itself and probably some of the limitations that we haven't yet discovered. But that could be 2 cycles, 3 cycles, 4 cycles, and 5, 6, 7 years from now, that could be 1/10 the size, and could be 10x or 100x or 500x more powerful, right?
Well, it's funny because there's like 2 different categories that people get into when we talk about a lot of AR stuff. It's the productivity. Every business, if there's 1,000 businesses where having some sort of overlay is going to help people work infinitely faster. Or if someone's learning, having an overlay for music, if you're learning to play guitar and I can have some changes floating up in front of me and giving advice, and oh my God, you're going to learn so much faster. Then the other side is the entertainment, right? And it feels like both people are saying we're trying to use both right now. It sounds like you're saying don't buy it for entertainment right now unless you're going to be a dev on it. Right. But if you're going to be a dev, you could probably do some wild stuff. You're on the cutting edge. You could be the first person to unlock. Someone's going to eliminate a bunch of employees, which good or bad, we'll see, by saying, cool, here's an app. 1 employee's now worth 10. And then boom, that company's going to say, that's 100% worth it. That's easy. And
yeah, we're definitely in the era right now of smaller teams being able to do more and build out disruptive tech with the combination of AI and AR. I think we're going to see a lot of that over the next cycle, next 10 years. And I think the apps are going to be more productive and also more or less featured, right? Than we see. That's typically how disruptive apps are. They kind of build for the lower end of the market, and they don't do as much as the incumbent apps do.
Well, if you look at when the iPhone came out, it really wasn't a productivity boost. Everyone who was on their BlackBerry was killing it more. I think BlackBerry was more. I mean, you can't go faster.
That first iPhone wasn't even 3G. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're talking about if you wanted to try to download anything from a cellular perspective, forget it. It wasn't happening. Yeah. Wi-Fi was okay, but and it was slow as shit. I mean, from a processor perspective, and it took me probably iPhone 2 or 3 before I got rid of my Palm Trio.
Totally.
So,
well, you were taking a productivity loss, weren't you? You know what I mean? It's like,
well, I think there was concern. I mean, we shouldn't delve into that, but the idea that the battery wasn't removable, that was an issue. The idea that you didn't have a keyboard, that was an issue.
the keyboard drama was the greatest thing in the world. It
No
was
copy
great.
and paste. Remember that?
Yeah, ridiculous.
So I remember the CTO of Motorola at the time, and he and I were talking. They talk like this. They were like, there's a battery remover. No one's going to want that thing, And of course, we know what happened to Motorola, and we know what happened to Apple. So he was wrong. Yeah. But those were big issues then for people, and especially people at BlackBerries. If you had a Trio, you were kind of a little bit ahead of the BlackBerry guy.
Yeah.
That was the cutting edge, handheld device. And it probably wasn't until the third or fourth generation of the iPhone that they really destroyed those early things. But Apple did that too with MP3 players. I mean, it's probably a little before your time, but
it's not.
No, Diamond Rio was like the thing, man. And, Apple came along with the iPod and it was a disc-based iPod, right?
I used to run around with a Walkman in my pocket and a backpack full of CDs. And I got that first iPod, and I filled it the day I got it, plugged it in my computer, filled. And I was like, I need a bigger one already. It was a revolution. It was
well, so the funny part about the iPod is the concept, the idea for the phone, Steve Jobs actually got from Ed Zander, who was the CEO of Motorola at the time. Motorola had the Razr, and they had built the first phone that actually included iPod and iMusic functionality, which had a 100-song limitation.
Yeah.
Not because of technology, but because Jobs didn't want, to Motorola to end up usurping, what Apple was planning to do. And Ed told me about how he walked around the block with Steve like 3 or 4 times, and then 9 months later, there was the iPhone. And
he's just at home at night like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why did I talk to Steve?
Yeah,
Never talk to Steve.
No, he totally was. I mean, it was quite a story, and
yeah. So I was just say, Patrick, since you're involved with talking to so many people who are like, I'm launching something new, let's go. You're a lot of excited, young technologists. What are the trends you've been seeing now for like the last 6 months? Has the people been gearing up for the Vision Pro and you're hearing more about it, or is it?
I haven't heard too much about the Vision Pro yet, to be honest. I think that there's some other foundational things with Bitcoin that still need to be kind of overcame. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what our focus is right now. We see a lot of protocols, making bridges safer, different L2s kind of making L2 safer, things like that are more infrastructure based. But I, as an investor and as, someone who's in charge of bringing great founders and entrepreneurs into the space, I actually want to start experimenting more with the Vision Pro and more founders that are kind of leveraging that kind of technology, and also art. We were talking about sculptures and 3D sculptures, and I mean, art is a huge, in my mind, it plays perfectly with the Vision Pro. Oh, yeah. So those are some verticals that I definitely want to start exploring. But yeah, I would say we're very protocol marketplace based. We see a lot of founders, wanting to build things like that right now.
Totally. I was gonna say on the art side, I mean, we've seen these, like, what do they call them? Like interactive experiences at museums go nuts. Anytime the van goes in town, there's a line around the block. Louis Vuitton's done, take over LACMA and show. People want to see art where they are in it themselves. I can take a pretty photo. It's just a new, immersive. So like, I do think that we're gonna see that happen more. There's just a problem now, right? Are we gonna go to the gallery and it's gonna be like, there's your headset? I mean, people wear earpieces to tell them about each painting sometimes.
I was in the Louvre last week at NFT Paris, and I was wearing I was using a brand new Nintendo that they gave with the audio guide.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible experience, honestly. It was like kludgy as fuck.
It's made Louvre the most expensive paintings in the entire world, and it's like, here's a shitty audio device. You can hear in 1967.
The headset
volume level was messed up. Like everything was busted out.
Yeah.
It was like ridiculous. But I think you're right.
Oh, Mike too.
Sorry. But one thing I was going to say is, iPhone moment for AR glasses or goggles. The reason that the iPhone succeeded, because like almost none of us use our phones for phones, right? Mm-hmm. But Apple attached a secondary functionality to a primary functionality, and it became the primary functionality, and the phone became the secondary functionality. I think that for AR to really succeed, it has to replace your glasses. And once it replaces your glasses, then you've got half the freaking world that has a primary use case with a secondary engagement asset, and that's the crossover point. So I think it's hard to be ubiquitous, even if it's $1,000, if it's something that, unless they come up with a real primary use case, because Apple didn't jump the chasm. They literally rode on the back of the thing everybody did, which was text and call.
Totally.
Cell
phones were the most important thing in the world.
Right.
When Apple put out the iPhone, it was important.
Right. It took Apple probably 7 to 10 years for the app ecosystem to flip to become the primary asset of the device, right?
So have you guys used I have the Ray-Bans. I would never support anything from Zuckerberg ever, but then he open sourced Llama. And I said, okay, he's on our side now.
Yep.
I got him, and pretty decent. It's not bad, and it is less awkward to go. The voice is terrible. Every time you say, okay, Meta, take a photo, it doesn't work. But the button, walking around and going, I'm in Venice, I see something crazy, I go, not bad. That's all it does. Photo and video.
30 seconds too.
I had
it's short.
First generation Snapchat
Yes.
spectacles, and I put my prescription lenses in them, and I it's the only wearable that I've used till it broke.
Wow.
Every other wearable I've used has been obsoleted before it's broken.
Totally.
But these, I was capturing footage of my kids when they were small on the beach and water. Bringing the glasses places they shouldn't be brought, and got so much great video on Snapchat from it. And actually the Meta Ray-Bans came up in conversation earlier today. My buddy's like, "Yo, you should check them out. They're only $200." And I'm like, maybe I will. Maybe I will.
I'll go grab mine after so you can wear them and try them out. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's bad though that I have other sunglasses because they're
a little bit bigger.
The problem is they're nice that a cheaper lower end sunglass, but if you get a nicer pair of sunglasses, I want the nicest pair.
Right.
Is the thing. They're I think pretty great for the price point, what they are so far, but at the same time, I don't wear them every day because I think other sunglasses are better.
I want my
quality,
Tom Fords to.
No,
to
literally,
do that.
They're pretty
exactly,
good though.
Exactly.
The Ray-Bans are pretty good.
They're not bad. They're not terrible. They're not terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is once you're addicted to Oliver Peoples or Tom Ford, all of a sudden you're like, all right, I need to keep going. So yeah. But at the same time, with even the Ray-Bans right now, it is still people are a little freaked out still of the fact that you're taking photos and video of them sometimes. You know
You're
what I mean?
not supposed to tell them.
Yeah. Well, no, the light goes off, okay? And already there's someone who says, hey, give me your glasses. We crack them open, and I can tell you how to get that light not to flash anymore, which is pretty hilarious. But there is that next thing of we're going to have a bunch of people out there. They're going to have them. Others aren't going to have them. And we're all going to know who's taking photos because you're used to it or you're going to be able to see inside of there. We're going to create two classes, I think, of the people who are in it and the people who aren't. I don't know, did you guys think about that often?
So as opposed to when Google Glass launched in 2013, there was kind of more of this expectation of privacy because not everybody had a smartphone.
Yes.
There weren't cameras everywhere, every city block that you went. Now, I think if you're in public, there's really no expectation that you have any type of privacy. If you do something on a line, somebody's going to get you on cell phone footage.
Yes.
Right? So I think it is a different world.
Yeah.
That said, I think if you're in an elevator with people, they might get a little creeped out, right?
Totally. Actually, I remember when
I don't think most people notice though, because I wore them skiing, and it would be fun because I'd go down the mountain and just
Totally.
It's great, right? But I've gone places and taken video where normally I might not take video with my phone, because I can get away with it and not freak people out that I'm sitting in a restaurant, and taking a picture of somebody that is a famous musician or some shit or whatever. But I think it's gonna be a while before those become ubiquitous. If the price point gets down to where that functionality can be included for $20, $30, $40 into a regular pair of sunglasses, then I think people will make that flip and they'll opt in. But they're definitely, it is cool because you're using your phone. It goes back to a story when I was at Motorola in the mid to late 2000s, and we had the Razr, which was the number one phone on the planet. The big thing that Motorola was focused on was what they called seamless mobility, which was just a bunch of bullshit they made up on a private jet with the CEO at one point in time. But they were all focused on watching video. And that same CTO said to me, he said, Jeff, I think the real opportunity is to turn it into a camera. And it, as it turns out, even though today video is now becoming so much more ubiquitous from a consumption perspective, predominantly YouTube on phones. YouTube is 50-60% of mobile phone consumption. But I think because of that, you now have this desire to capture. And it's sort of become endemic in everybody's lives, whether it's your little kid going to their first day of school, or it's a party with a bunch of degens that you want to capture on video, or a panel. Those are things that are I think people are gonna opt in much more quickly than they will to VR, because it's a much simpler application, right? You don't need to be a genius to hit the record button.
Totally.
And friction is always the limiter in adoption.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so we do got to talk some Bitcoin stuff too. But before we do that, though, I do want to ask, since you actually are teaching students here, like, how is this affecting like new students coming in? Is anyone saying, like, you're already working in like AR, XR? There's got to be some kids like, hey, I want to be the biggest artist ever to make stuff where you have to put on a Vision Pro to see it.
So there is interest in building. I think that it's what's interesting is that the tools enable it, right? So you have Unreal Engine, despite the fact that they're in a massive fight, Epic Games, the company who makes Unreal, despite the fact that they're in a massive legal fight with Apple, they're building compatibility to the Vision Pro. That's going to be in the next release. And the students want to learn Unreal so they can ship to all, like, AAA content to all of the ecosystems, including VR. So it's kind of like a yes and for them.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Being first is also really interesting as an artist. Using AI tools for them, I think it's just a massive, massive unlock. And we were talking about this a little bit before the panel. Typically, a year or two ago, creative artists who were somewhat technical artists would not make their own tools per se, right? They would use other people's tools. Now, with these LLMs built into VS Code, you can get ChatGPT level support through GitHub Copilot on a code base. That means for a student or any artist, you download some code from the internet on you ask ChatGPT how do I make this tool using Blender's Python module in Python. They can ask the LLM questions about the code, understand it well enough, get code hints to write their own code, and before you know it, they have their own instrumentation, their own instrument that they built that they know how to play to make beautiful art. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that across the field here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're also already seeing a bunch of AI companies try and integrate with Unity and Unreal right inside of it. So it's, I want to generate a 3D background. Great, import it to Unity right away. And you're like, whoa, that was weeks of work before, and it's not perfect, obviously. But if you're also a person who's trying to get into the game industry or making stuff, like, being able to put out a demo faster to then attract other people is a lot better than
It's really cool. And what's awesome is that the open source systems for it are adopting the code from the papers so quickly and putting it into like plug and play node-based systems. So there's one in particular that's really taken the whole art industry by storm. That's called Comfy UI. And it's totally open source. You can run it locally on your machine. So I'm teaching that to my students. I'm like, here's the pipeline. And there was a paper that came out a few weeks ago called LGM, which does like nerf to Gaussian splatting to make real time or near real time. You could put a prompt in, get a 3D model out. Not a perfect model, but something pretty decent, like close to what Loom is doing. And you can do that all open source. Any gaming PC, you can run it on.
We're probably a decade, maybe a decade and a half away from there being no developers, and driving.
As a developer, controversial opinion.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're enabling everybody to be a creator without having the reliance on what's the word I'm looking for? Not a knowledge base to actually build. Like we're allowing people to work top down, and that's without having bottom up. That's not going to happen today or even 5 years from now, but we're at a point where probably my view is if you were to look around the corner 10, 15 years from now, I don't have to know anything about coding. I don't even have to pick the ideal language. I can literally take because it starts with an idea. Everything starts with an idea. And the question is, how many other people have to go execute that idea and then keep it working and keep it secure and keep it scalable and all the rest of it? That's all going to go away. And what can't go away, at least the last piece to go away, will be the top of the pyramid, which is the creator, the visionary, the strategy, the approach, the thing that LLMs aren't even remotely close to at this point. they'll get there, I'm sure, but that you got to get rid of that. You got to start at the bottom of the pyramid and work your way up. And right now, we're a productivity tool for the bottom of the pyramid, but we're eventually going to be It's eventually going to be an elimination tool, and each one of those stratas are going to disappear.
Yeah. So I have a thought. It's like a slight twist on that. So I had someone introduce themselves to me. I think it was like at this conference, and he introduced himself as a non-technical co-founder. I think that term is going to go away. Just the same way that people used to say, "Oh, I'm computer illiterate." Remember that in the late 90s, and people would just say that. But like, I told him, I'm like, look, you got ChatGPT. You can ask questions to the code base and understand it to make better decisions when you're partnering with your CTO and product strategy and all that stuff that you're responsible for building. Like, you should really understand your code base like you understand your product. I think there's really going to be, like, the next year or so, no excuse for a non-technical co-founder not to really understand their code base.
Agree 100%. Yeah.
So Patrick, since you deal with a lot of founders, right? Are you seeing a trend that way? Are you seeing like people?
No, not yet. Everyone's pretty proficient in coding. I mean, yeah, it offers more versatility. Like, you can't do everything no code right now.
No, yeah, you can't.
At least I haven't seen it.
No, you can't. Well, remember, no matter what, if an LLM spits out some code, someone has to audit it, and they have to understand it. Especially if you're doing something on chain that's permanent, or you're trying to launch any type of place where people are going to lock their money up. It's like we need humans. You can have computers help.
Stay tuned.
But right now, stay tuned. Yeah. Maybe.
Exactly. And to
stay tuned. Come talk to me in a year.
Okay.
And I could agree. I think that eventually we'll get no code. For non-technical co-founders, and to your point, it's just I have seen an increasing interest in it. It's just not there yet, but I definitely think that the idea has already started growing.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think it depends what your definition of a technical or non-technical co-founder is. Jobs wasn't writing code; Wozniak was, right? Yeah. But yet he was the one that drove the product roadmap, and everybody else built the shit.
Apple
right?
would not be Apple with just Wozniak, right?
Right.
We know that. You need jobs back.
We know that because we saw what happened after.
Yeah.
So I think tech, to your point of tech illiterate versus non-tech co-founder, those are too tight of a description. I think you've got to have CTO level kind of understanding of tech, but you don't necessarily have to be the best full stack engineer to go. In fact, I think most of the time it hampers you because typically you know what can be done and what the limitations are, and you're talking about a whole bunch of them right now. When I go build shit, I don't care what the limitations are. The harder it is, the happier I am.
Yeah, you can get in trouble sometimes having a CTO who's too deep in the code, and it's like, you need to go CTO. Stop. Devs need a dev over here. You don't need to build all of it.
Precisely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's.
So before we maybe wrap up here, maybe since we're all actually at an ordinal house right now, we're all talking Bitcoin stuff. So just like for the next year, what are you most excited in Bitcoin? What is the thing you're like focusing, you're looking at the closest? Maybe Michael, why don't we start with you?
So I'm really excited about 3D content and real-time content on Bitcoin ordinals.
Awesome.
I've been thinking about there's a method for doing real-time shaders called SDF. Sign distance functions, and there's some really dope art that you can make with this. The files are incredibly small because it's just math. So I think that there's an opportunity to make some of that art, maybe make the tools a little bit less codey and more user friendly, so artists can dive into that and put that on chain. And I think the ordinals ecosystem is going to continue to grow.
Awesome. I was gonna say I got some artists to introduce you that are doing some stuff around that.
Love
you
it.
Probably can help out. Okay.
You
might have some math for them.
I'm down to teach them.
Beautiful. Patrick.
Yeah, I would say I'm most excited about enterprise level use cases. I've seen increasing interest from different enterprise companies, and just utilizing blockchain for remuneration strategies. And I'm super bullish on profit sharing and rewarding users. So I think that there's so many amazing things that you could do utilizing blockchain, utilizing tokens, utilizing some of these things that blockchain offers. So I'm super bullish on combining a real world asset, even if it's a pair of shoes, even if it's a hat, something that's actually tangible with some of the benefits of blockchain. And Bitcoin is in a really unique position to be that kind of safe space for enterprise companies.
Beautiful, totally. Yeah, actually, one of the first people who's actually mentioned enterprise since I've been here. You know what I mean? So that's
I love it, man. I'm super bullish, and I'm sure you have an enterprise background, so I want to talk.
Yeah,
to you
and my startup token form is only enterprise focused.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So I think I think the whole PFP, the whole 3D video piece, all of sort of the fun stuff and the art and the creative stuff is really just a first level stepping stone for true utility for blockchain to really get itself figured out. Security is a critical issue, right? I mean, in anything, whether it's Web 2, Web 3, your house, doesn't matter, right? Your car, like it's all about security. So I think security is going to be a huge opportunity. And I think the enterprise is going to be the thing that brings, chains into the mainstream. The thing I worry about to some degree, I mean, the one great thing about Ordinals and Bitcoin is the mass adoption, the structure of the chain. But you get into things like TPS and transaction fees and, and how you're going to manage side chains, and that gets more complicated. And so my guess is that, on the enterprise side, it's probably not going to be ETH, Solana, Polygon, or Bitcoin that becomes the enterprise platform. More than likely, it's going to be something that's choreographed for those needs. But Bitcoin clearly has solidified itself as a value store, and that is probably permanent or near permanent. And the question is, what can you bolt onto that value store to be successful? And I think that'll come down to the scalability limitations of the chain. And that's a question. That's really a question.
That's why L2 has been one of the biggest buzzwords everywhere I go today. It's L2, L2.
I'm also super bullish on smart contracts.
Okay, nice.
Very, very bullish on smart contracts. We've used them with different enterprise companies to distribute profit essentially to users. One of the use cases that's pretty cool that we built is a application that allows users to input data on themselves, like answer questions like, do you plan on buying a car this year, whatever it is. And that data actually goes to this unique data hub where data buyers purchase the data from that hub, and 50% of profits go to the company, and 50% of the profits go distributed automatically to everyone who provided that data through a smart contract. Just by engaging with that smart contract, automatically creates a perfect record of that, user ID, wallet, whatever you want to say, and just.
And I don't have to buy the car. I just got to tell them I want to buy it.
And the analogy I would use is it's like decentralized web services. So smart contracts are so freaking valuable because they're completely portable. You're not locked in on a proprietary centralized subsystem of somebody's, right? Or operating systems. You got this underlying open source operating system, and then you can build these completely decentralized knowledge pods to execute whatever it is you need to execute. I think that's going to be the bigger story 5 or 10 years from now, is how people do leverage smart contracts, because that unlocks it unlocks enterprises from captive proprietary solutions.
Totally.
Because then you can walk away and you can pick your red hat, that you want to work with, and leave the next day if they don't offer the service level that you need. But today, if you're a telecom, for instance, just to give you an example, a big telecom, and you've got a billing system from Amdocs, you're spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and you can't get out.
Yeah.
You're stuck. Yeah. So those types of applications, eventually, we're not there because the chains aren't, all the pieces aren't in place to support it. It'll probably be a decade. But those are the kinds of things that are where smart contracts can be just incredibly valuable. Like, how do you apply a late fee, to an account? Mm-hmm. Like, now you have to go into a system which has to look at everything. Mm-hmm. You could decentralize that engine. And so I'm a huge, huge fan of smart contracts.
In the legal system, and to that point, the legal system is prime for disrupting. And I think smart contracts, off-chain and on-chain smart contracts, are really going to take it to the next level.
100%.
I've got one thing to add that we kind of touched on, but we didn't really go there. There is so much latent GPU power on people's machines. Decentralized GPUs with smart contracts are like,
well, it takes almost nothing to execute, which saves all that data center power and people, right? Which is freaking hugely expensive, right?
You're paying. Sorry, you're paying $1 to $3 per hour to get a GPU.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You could support maybe 1 or 2 users,
Right.
maybe 3.
Especially thinking about LLMs,
Yeah.
right? And what NVIDIA's getting for, 1 unit at 45 grand, right?
Right. You know,
It ain't $3 an hour.
No, not for the A100s, A1000,
Yeah.
even more than that, right?
Yeah.
So it's still like, but meanwhile, everybody has these gaming PCs. Any Mac that's been made that has like the M1, M2, M3,
yeah.
they're good. The iPhones are even good. So you got to figure Moore's Law, like another 18 months or so, we're going to turn over tech, and there'll be really good technology for running AI and running renders on 3D in everybody's pocket and everybody's desk that's not being used most of the time.
Well, let me give you a visual just to give you a sense of how Moore's Law works. So my dad started a company in 1983. I took it over in 87 as a 21-year-old, and now I've aged out myself. And we built a subsystem that ended up producing about half the audio cassettes in the world because we stored an entire album in memory.
Yeah, wow.
Now, that memory subsystem was a gigabyte, just so you know, and it was about 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5, and it was $475,000.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
So think about that gigabyte today, which is the size of a small, dorm refrigerator at $500,000 versus, today you can put a terabyte on a thumb drive for, $100, right? Yeah. So we can't even begin. What we know for sure is this shit's going to just keep moving and getting smarter and faster and more scalable. And if you wait long enough, you're going to get analogies like that. You'll be sitting here, with a cane going, yeah, I remember when I had, shit on my face, and now you got a Neuralink implant, right? And you can just turn on the 3D, engine, and it's pretty crazy where we're at. We're probably the most, I'm sure everybody says this at every point in time throughout history. When the printing press came, I'm sure they said the same shit, but it feels like we're at a point where we're just at that tipping point where technology can actually improve on itself. And I think it's been humans up till now.
Yeah.
And that was the point I was kind of making, is now we're just crossing that chasm to where technology without human intervention can continue to evolve in that Moore's Law pace or whatever it is. And that's an extraordinary event.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Super fun conversation. Thank you so much, Michael, Patrick, Jeff. We're going to have some more conversations like this in the future. If you guys want to find any more information, we'll have some links to all of your Twitter accounts. And thank you, everyone. We're going to see you in a little bit for the next talk.